Good morning. Today's excursion is out to Potsdam. Potsdam was the site of the very, very important meeting between Stalin, Truman, and Churchill. And what's interesting to me is when Steve and I were in Yalta, we visited the site of the Yalta Conference with Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin. Besides that, I'm going to read from the brochure of what we're going to see today. We're going to see the palaces and gardens of Potsdam, strolling through the gardens and the old Dutch quarter, and learn about the Bridge of Spies. So come with us on our last day in Berlin. Maria from Sweden is our guide today.
And we're going to walk through the former Death Strip. That is the empty piece of land in between the two walls. Because the Berlin Wall, it was actually two walls. And it went all the way around West Berlin. So we are going west, but we're actually going to be in East Germany. And we are going to Cecilienhof. That is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And that is where the Allies sat down after World War II, and they held a conference and divided the world amongst each other. And from there we're going to go past the KGB prison, and the KGB was the Soviet secret police.
Once you validate your all-day pass, which I totally recommend doing an all-day or two-day pass, you do not have to do anything else. You can hop on and off any of the subways or buses. However, don't try it without a ticket. There are tremendous, tremendous fines.
So I'm going to show you the highlights of the city, and there are a lot of highlights. So we're going to start with the old city mark, the old city center, and then after that we're going to take a tram. During the 17th century, the royal family here, they thought it was so nice with all the lakes and all the rivers and everything. Let's build our summer palaces in Potsdam. And Pots in the Slavic language, it means bog, marsh. And you know, Berlin, it means swamp.
Potsdam is the capital, Brandenburg, one of Germany's states, and formerly Prussia.
So they had a little fishing village here, and then it became part of the Brandenburg region. It was a district run by some princes, electors called the Hohenzollerns. And they were running this on behalf of the Holy Roman Germanic Empire. It is the Nikolai Church, and that was built in 1830.
It's still an original building.
Also original, you have this. This building is a beautiful building. That was built in 1756, and that is the old city hall.
One of Hopper's most famous paintings is in the Art Institute in Chicago, the diner one. Took it to the last stop on 93.
But hang on a minute, we all speak the same language, and we all like sausages and beer. So let's not fight, let's unite. And that's what they did. They came together in 1871, and they founded a big, great empire called Germany, Deutschland. And the king of Prussia, he was now the Kaiser, the Caesar.
It's nice to know we take the train to the last stop.
First of all, you had World War II. I mean, after the Nazis won the election, they started World War II in September 1939 when they invaded Poland. So, well, they used to be part of Prussia once upon a time. That is ours. It was just a peace treaty in Versailles that took it away from us. And let's start off this horrible war. In July 1945, the Allies, they came to Potsdam. And here they divided the world amongst each other. Here you can see Europe, and there is a white line going through Europe, dividing, slicing off a little piece of Germany up there. Well, that was the so-called Iron Curtain. It was Winston Churchill in 1946 that came up with that term. He said, I'm worried about the future of Europe. I'm worried about the future of the world. I can see an iron curtain slowly dividing the world into two. To the Soviet Union, yellow to the US, and green to the British. You have some American military bases there in the middle. And the French, they were not at this conference, but they complained, so they got 2 bits of Germany as well. And the Soviets, they had this whole bit. But in the middle of the Soviet sector, you have Berlin. And everyone wanted Berlin. To stop any fighting, they divided Berlin into 4 pieces. 8 neighborhoods in the east now belong to the Soviet Union, 6 leafy suburbs in the southwest to the US, and 4 to the British. That's why we started a tour. So Zoologische Garten is just here on the British side. And because they were still complaining, the French got 2 bits as well. Post lighting up the death strip, you had watchtowers, you had spike mats, the spikes were this high, you had these tank stoppers that would stop tanks from going over, you had an inner wall, and quite often you had a border zone wall. So the East Germans were not allowed to get close to the inner wall. So here where we are, there was a border zone wall here, and then you had the inner wall just where the water is, and on the other side of the bridge you had the western wall, the outer wall. And the water was patrolled with boats, with the guards and so on. At the end of 1961, the Soviets, they captured a spy. His name was Gary Powers. He was the test pilot for the U-2 spy plane. And it was the U-2 spy plane that managed to discover the Soviet nuclear missiles on Cuba in 1962. So it was a very important plane. It could fly really high over radar, and they had like high definition cameras that could actually spot things on the ground. Now he crash landed over enemy territory, and they took him to a prison in the Soviet Union. And almost at the same time, they discovered a Russian spy in New York, and that was Rudolf Abel. He was one of these kind of sleeper agents. He was a very kind of nondescriptive little man as well. So they had Rudolf Abel on the western side, and they had Gary Powers on the eastern side. Now there was came from this side, the eastern side, and Rudolf Abel, he came from the other one. And when they made the film with Tom Hanks, they got permission to use the bridge.
So this side right here was the east side, and way down there was the west side of Berlin. Very interesting story. If you haven't seen Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks, watch it. It's excellent. That's Babelsberg Castle right across the river.
They also made the Testament.
You could take a boat from Berlin down here to Potsdam. That would have been fun if we had the time, which we don't. Babelsberg Studios is right behind the castles, and from the beginning, that's when Blue Angel with Marlene Dietrich was made, and 2 of the Hunger Games were filmed there, as well as Bridge of Spies.
And on the other side of the lake,
do you see the different colors?
It looks a bit like a
the west side is a darker green.
And that is wasn't called romantic because
that's the ferry. It's coming right in here to the ferry stage.
It is
that
because
would be
he loved the Romanesque. So the guards would sit in there like a little bunker, so no one could shoot at them, and then they would watch this border zone. And then you had the inner wall, which was there. There were no trees. And then on the other side you had the outer wall, the western wall.
This used to be the death strip, and now it's a very fashionable area to live in Potsdam. And even Tom Hanks has bought a house here. Know that if you join one of these walking tours, you are going to walk. Yesterday, the walk was well over 6 miles. The East Germans are known for their nude sunbathing. Obviously, I'm not going to show any frontals. That is the Marble Palace, and way back there is the church where we began walking this morning, and in front of us is what is called the greenhouse. The greenhouse was for the servants who tended the garden. That's where the Potsdam Conference was held.
And on the 17th of July 1945 they sat down in the big conference hall in this building and held the Potsdam Conference. So here you can see Joseph Stalin, the Soviet dictator, looking very happy there, and Harry Truman in the middle, and Winston Churchill. The picture is taken from the courtyard. Then in the middle of that conference, well, Winston Churchill had to leave because he lost the election in Britain. And the Cold War, it was very much about nuclear armament. The Soviets have been spying on the US while they were trying to take a decision of doing this here, because the building was rigged with bugs, with microphones. I mean, there are plenty of bugs here, but the microphone variation. And they had heard this. They were not too worried because they were working on their own nuclear program. They didn't have a nuclear bomb in 1945, but in the 50s they had it. You have this, which was the central remand prison for the Soviet Secret Service, the KGB. And before that, in the 19th century, this was a lovely villa. And then it became like a home for women, single women.
The Soviet intelligence, or the KGB, imprisoned Soviet citizens, Germans, and people of other nationalities in this building until 1955. The number of people held here remains unknown to this day. And the adjacent building housed the Secret Service Investigation Division, which interrogated prisoners and forced confessions.
About 300,000 people living in Potsdam all over. All of that was taken over by the Soviets after World War II, and they established this so-called Forbidden City. They took over this whole area, and there were 120,000 Soviet sort of special agents and Soviet military personnel living in this area. So they've taken over all these really grand, beautiful buildings here and settled down here during the time of the Cold War. And they used to torture people in there. Several thousands of prisoners were being... Everyone was
20 to 50 million people were killed under Stalin. We're now going to take the bus to the Rat House in the Dutch area. The medieval-looking gate still remaining in Potsdam was built by Frederick the Great, a man of many talents. Nobody knows better than the Dutch how to build on swampy or marshland, anything like that, which is why they brought the Dutch over to construct this entire area for their laborers, workmen, etc.
But this was built as a prison in 1870, so it was like the city prison. And then it was taken over. It became a Gestapo prison, a Gestapo remand prison. That was the secret police of the Nazis, while the Stasi took over. And the Stasi, that was the most powerful spy organization that ever existed. They had a spy for every 63rd person living in East Germany. Wherever you went, they were listening to you. And if you said anything bad about the government or tried to run away or something, well, you would end up in a remand prison like this. And they would sort of interrogate you. They would shine big spotlights on you, and you would have to sit on your hands, and then a guard would be there grilling you with questions. He would take turns every 3 hours. He would go away somewhere, and then another guard would take over, and after 40 hours, you're so exhausted, you don't even know who you are. Because it leads towards Brandenburger Tor, the original, and also towards Brandenburg City. Okay. Now the big church down there, this is St. Peter's Cathedral, built in 1750, and that is a Catholic.
What a great street. One of the first flower stands that I've seen.
This here was built in 1770. It always looked like this, and it was built to celebrate the victory of the 7-Year War. So you can see the date there, and you can see the armory and the great why he built that.
Centre de Saint-Souci.
And we're going to do that. Of course, everything here is and poetry and philosophy and all these things. He was also very interested in interest here. So Frederick the Great, he brought a potato plant with him from Ireland, And he told his men, grow this, it's great, you can sort of boil it and use it in the food.
The terrace is leading
he
up.
hadn't given them strictly the farmers that sort of successfully grew potatoes.
The windmill is a reconstruction. This part was firebombed during the war. But it was here before, way before Sanssouci, before Frederick the Great built this amazing palace.
So the palace was opened in 1770. They started building it in 1763. So that one, it has 13 rooms. This one has 300 rooms.
Oh my God.
And it's huge. You can only see the middle there with the dome.
The statues are all devotees of the god Bacchus, god of wine. Frederick the Great was a very unusual king to say the least.
He died here, behind the doors here, in his armchair, on the 18th of August, 1786. His dogs.
And yes, those are
He always
potatoes.
said they're better than people. So you have 11 greyhounds here that he adored more than anything else. And I can take you into the shade and tell you why.
There's a big, long story about the potatoes, but I don't have the time to go into it. I'll let you Google it. We started at the farthest point from Sanssouci.
We very much rely on the people.
I would have loved to go see the new palace, but I'm just too darn tired. Next train is at 4:20. Typical great German train station. Some nice looking bakeries here.
It leaves in 5 minutes, you don't have to.
Oh, okay. Everybody was rushing.